Hi, welcome to my show. Today my guest is Parisa Ghaderi. Ghaderi? Ghaderi, okay. and uh, Parisa is an artist and a filmmaker, and I met her at Wayne State University where I was doing a presentation about my documentary, Living Tribal in a Democracy, and she approached me afterwards and she shared her feelings about the documentary. You liked it, I guess, from what you said, and partially because it was a documentary about the women in my family, and I was explaining that I was giving them a platform through this documentary to share their stories. So Parisa, she shared with me how she does similar work for women artists, and I would love to hear more about that. First, welcome to my show.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you. Well, I just loved so based on the images that you sent me alone from all these amazing artists. Sometimes this is what I love about these kind of opportunities when we go out and speak,
Yeah.
is that we become familiar with something, we get introduced to something we weren't even aware is in our neighborhood. I did not know that there are, these Iranian artists. I know that there's a larger population of Iranian-born Americans in California.
For sure.
Yeah, but then when I saw the kind of work that you're doing, I was so impressed, and I'd love for you to tell us more about that, please.
Sure. So do you want me to talk about the exhibition and
Yes,
how it was?
how
Okay.
it was
Sure,
started.
sure,
Yes.
sure. So the exhibition is called Inner Fragments, and it's a traveling show. So in 2015, my friend and collaborator Mahsa Surudi and I, we had, it was initially started by Mahsa. She had this idea of organizing this show because during that time she was working as a docent at the Orange County Museum of Art, and she was just so upset about how the image of like Middle Eastern women are presented in the art world here, and she was really disappointed, and it was and we talked about it, and we realized that we share the same concern, and so we took it from there, and we had like weekly meetings, and we talked about it, and we did a lot of research, and so we formed this collective. It's called 7,500 miles, which refers to the distance between Tehran and her hometown now in
Oh,
California.
that's what that
Yeah.
is. And is this part of the exhibition, like these
Yes.
pictures that I'm
Yes.
putting? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
This is the exhibition at the University of Michigan, which happened this February. And so far we have exhibited it in Detroit. Last April we exhibited at Norwest Gallery in Detroit. Then it went to the University of Farmington at Maine in September 2018. And then this is part of the like some of the photos from the Detroit exhibition. And
Well,
in
no, is this solely taking place in Michigan or has it
Uh,
gone elsewhere?
no, it's been in Detroit and then Maine, University of in
Oh, Maine.
Farmington,
Oh,
Maine.
okay, because you're
Yes.
saying Farmington, and I wasn't sure if it
No,
was
no,
our
no,
Farmington.
no, no,
Okay,
no. It's
okay, so it
Farmington,
has been,
Maine,
yes.
and then it's going in August. It's going to Hamilton, Ohio, to
Okay,
be on view through October
beautiful.
at Fitton Center.
Now, and the artists that are participants, are they Iranian American? Do they have to be, or
Uh,
how?
it's a
What's,
mix.
okay.
So the majority of the artists are living inside Iran. They live and work inside Iran. Only 5 out of 16 artists live outside of Iran. Two live in California. One lives in Turkey, and two live in Canada.
Okay. Wow, so that's great. It's like such an international project.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, but they are all like born and raised in Iran, but they have immigrated to other part of the world at different times.
And so, given that you're interested in this, I would like to learn more about your past and how you were born in Iran.
Yes.
Yes. And when did you come here? And did you mostly study here? Do you go back often? So I'd like to learn more about that.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Iran. I immigrated to the U.S. in 2009. And I started my MFA studies at the University of Michigan in 2011, and I got my MFA in 2014, and I stayed here since then. So, and I've been doing fine art work, filmmaking, curating. I've been teaching drawing and photography out of my studio since 2014. And
I mean, you've accomplished quite a bit in a very small time. When you started speaking with me about your work, I mostly thought that you were involved in artwork. Then when you sent me your bio and all these films and awards, and I'm thinking, when did she do this and when is she doing that? And what about the filmmaking part? Was that something did you start that here, or was that something you were already involved in when you were in Iran? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was just fascinating for me too. Now that I look back, so my passion for filmmaking started in my thesis year at the University of Michigan. It was 2013, 2014 when I was working on my thesis. And I was trying, so the main thesis topic was about immigration and distance and my personal experience and the loss that I had experienced. So, and I was fascinated by the moving image. So I was working with cinematograph, which is a technique which part of the image moves, and I was experimenting with different types of moving the image. And so I taught myself Final Cut, and then so that was the beginning. And I made.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I taught myself Final Cut, and then so you just self-taught yourself how to edit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just is interesting for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to film school, and I still have an issue with Final Cut. And I just like how you just said, well, I taught myself, and then I went on to do this and this. You went on to make 4 short films, and a number of them won awards.
Yeah.
Okay. Very impressive, really.
Thank you. Yeah. So and so my very first movie installation was part of my thesis show when I had this life-size projection, which was a group of people. It was like a reenactment of the airport scene. So you could see a group of people who were waving at you, and they were either waiting for someone to come or they were the one who was leaving. So it was an interesting. I was more interested in showing the dynamics of the relationship and things and what happens at the airport, because it's such a loaded place, And so that was the beginning of my movie career. And then after that, I made a 5-minute short film, Still, which was about my experience of losing my mom when I was here, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I lost her. So
where was she?
She was in Iran, and I couldn't go because of all these visa complications, and so it really affected me, and shifted my whole practice, because suddenly all of my work became about loss and distance, and this not only the geographical distance but the emotional distance that we suffer as immigrating to other countries. We feel isolated. So that became the main theme of my whole work. And then so I made the Still, and it was screened at different festivals. It won awards. And then my second film, and the most, it was a very 1-minute story that I played with my mom's wedding film. And I just, it's just a 1-minute short clip, which was screened at different festivals and even at Detroit Voices, and it won awards in Brazil.
I wish you would have sent me that clip. I would have loved to.
Yes.
Did you? No. Was it in?
No.
I would have loved to see that. 1 minute. Why do you think that it won? It's a 1 minute video.
Yeah.
What? And it was images of your mom's wedding.
Yes.
Images like pictures, or was it footage?
It's just the footage.
Yeah. I know it's kind of hard to describe, film, but what do you think was behind that it won something 1 minute? And
Sure.
Partly I'd like you to share this because sometimes people, they don't value their ideas.
Sure.
And sometimes they'll think, oh, it's too short, or it's too silly, or it's not relevant enough, it's this and this, and they'll wipe out the opportunity to show something that's meaningful and work on their talents to share something meaningful for them.
For sure.
So I'd like you to share a little bit about that behind the film,
Sure.
the 1 minute film.
So this 1 minute film starts with my mom's wedding, and it's my own voice that I start to narrate what has happened to all these people who are at the wedding. So I say, this woman on the right died of brain tumor. The other woman to the left just got Alzheimer, the other one. Because that's how it works when you look back at your family, videos. It's just you see that, oh my God, suddenly all of these people are gone, and they're kind of out of the picture. So that was my main thing. It's just 1 minute, but I just fast forward through everyone saying this one was separated, this one got divorced, this one lost his child. It's just all these people that
all these stories in 1 minute.
Yes.
In one place, and each one having a different direction.
That's right. Yeah.
And it does give us a perspective also about life. That yes, it's just it's there, and it seems long on one side, but then it can snap. Everybody has their own stories, and then just disappears out of the frame.
Yeah, and you never know what happens to people. It's you share a timeline with them, and from some point they just it diverges into different.
I do think that because myself as an immigrant, we have a feeling about that differently than other people, because I left when I was a child, though, and it took decades for me to come to terms with that loss, and then to kind of create that connection, because we just left. I mean, we didn't even say goodbye, because at that time, with the political tension and stuff like that, we just left. It was one day I'm with my friends and my neighborhood, and then the next day all disappears, and you don't, in our situation, you don't go and visit. It's not a place that you can go and reconnect. And so for many years, that always played a role into my storytelling. And it seems that that's what happened in your case. Yes. So, because I was going to ask you what has been the influence, and you just shared that with us. And I see the advantages of that, because people, which is very beautiful in this country, people want to know and are interested and open to know what the immigrant experience is like. But what would you say were some of the setbacks to that? Do you think maybe that feeling towards loss, maybe does that overpower some of the other emotions, or do you feel, what is the setback?
You mean the setback for?
Well, the setback of having that kind,
being an
immigrant, right?
Okay.
And in putting that into your art and expressing that through your art, what happens, and what are things that sometimes you feel that kind of sometimes does hold you back? Do you feel that then your stories are mostly associated with that story?
Yeah, I think one thing which was interesting for me to explore was the disadvantage of being an immigrant was that some people wanted to see me in a certain way that they were so used to seeing. There's, as you obviously know, that there's a certain cliche about like Middle Eastern women. And when you're from that area, suddenly they want to see that image, not the one who's in front of them. They want to say, okay, who's that person? Who's that oppressed, victim, weak woman? And when they see that the opposite in front of them, is just like they start to, I think,
Do you maybe they feel uncomfortable?
yes, they feel uncomfortable because it's something that's new and out of their comfort zone. They're so used to seeing that imagery on and on that when it contradicts, they become so confused and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that I believe I talked about
Yes.
when at Wayne State at
Yeah.
I experienced the same thing where it was like I grew up a certain way, but all I saw the stories available were the exact opposite of what I experienced. And not to say that there isn't all of that.
I know.
Because there is the oppression and there's the abuse and
sure.
everything, as it is everywhere else.
For
But
sure.
yes, maybe it is on a much higher scale in the
Exactly.
Middle East. But there's another world that does exist, and that part it seemed like there's no room for it.
For sure.
And when I started writing, I did not see myself as Iraqi American, or I didn't really see my ethnicity playing so much of a role, but just basically to tell a story in a literary way. But I did end up finding through the publishing industry, later in the film industry, even with the media, that there was a discomfort when I didn't provide the stories, especially as a woman, that when I didn't provide the stories that everybody was so used to.
That's true.
Some people were even almost offended that as if you're telling a lie just by telling your story.
I know.
So I see. I see what you mean. The challenge in that, that staying true to that despite the fact. Because I remember one time an editor, he said, your work is so great, and it could really be a bestseller if you wrote about something like honor killing.
I know.
And I said, well, unfortunately I don't know what that is. I didn't experience it. I know it exists, but that's not part of my story. And thank God I didn't go in that direction for the sake of having a bestseller or anything like that. But times have also changed, and I do see that there's a big shift in comparison to before. Wouldn't you say? Well, you haven't been here that long. I mean,
it's going to be 10 years.
10 years, yeah. But there, in my opinion, being here, I've been here since 1981. I feel like there's a big shift, and there's more welcoming to diverse voices. Yeah. Do you feel like maybe there is a shift a little bit? There more willingness to listen, or
sure, absolutely. Like when we have this exhibition, and so I often go and as like the curator, and then I have like Q&A or like panel discussions, and it's so fascinating how people are so thirsty to know more, and they express it like this is the part of the world that we don't have access to, and we are so ignorant about because all we know about is through media, and it's so distorted. And when they love to know in my voice that what's it like to be a woman artist in Iran, which is fascinating. And everywhere that we travel with the exhibition, we get like all these amazing questions and feedback, which I think it's like the most satisfying part of it.
Yeah, that's what you just said.
Yes.
I do see the same thing, that there is an interest, and people are wanting to know, to learn of that world, and not necessarily what they've been only fed all these years. So you obviously are very productive. That's wonderful. One of the things when I started this show is not only to highlight people like yourself who are doing really amazing things, and to me, I feel that if we have an issue of what's out there, whether it's in the media and books and film, we can either be angry or upset, or we can create what we feel like we want people to see, because then we can just put our energies into that. So part of it is to highlight
Mm-hmm.
the wonderful people that are doing great things. And another part is to inspire, so that someone like you that is doing this much, and so I don't know, did they teach English? Did you know English before you came here? Or
Yes, but it was different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So given that it's not even your language and it's a
Mm-hmm.
new country and there's so much adjustment and you're leaving your family, and yet you became this productive. So I'm curious, what's your schedule like? How do you balance the
Mm-hmm.
creative side with the business side, so that people that want to be artists who might think this is a struggling career, that they could learn something from the process?
For sure, yeah. I usually give my highest priority to the creative side, but I'm an artist, and to be realistic, I know what the struggles and challenges are to live and sustain as an artist. So, and I know that in order to keep going and not to burn out yourself, you need to have a steady income to just fund your projects. But I think for me is that I put my main focus on the creative part, but in the meantime, whenever I need, I just have this teaching job and freelance job, which I do on the side, which is very helpful. And I also constantly apply for grants and other sources of funding, and I reach out to people. And I haven't tried crowdfunding yet, but I have asked like private donors. Like for our first exhibition in Detroit, we had a private donor who was part of the community, and he was interested in the show. So I think it's good to just reach out to people, in terms of like financial and the business side of the work. You don't have to do everything yourself.
Well, see, and that's very empowering, what you just said. I sometimes it seems like with artists or writers, there's they feel like they don't know how to do that, or maybe that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But in your case, and I think most or probably all successful artists and writers understand the value of having that balance, of knowing how to market their work, because after all, depending on the seriousness of our craft, we want to reach our work to reach people, because one aspect, one phase of it is the experience that it does to us. It transforms us as we create this project. But then the next thing is to have it reach to people's hearts. That's our goal oftentimes. So I like that attitude, that you understand that this is just basically part of the process. As I think any job or anything has that to it, right? I mean, if somebody feels shy about that, what would you say to somebody who might feel a little bit hesitant or shy as an artist, especially as a woman, that to top it off, you know? I don't know, any advice that you can give? I just like how you have it set up. It just seems in a nice balance.
Yeah, I think the thing that for me, it's like I take I don't take no for answer. It's like, okay, if you don't give me the money, I'll go to other sources, and I kept going, and I just never gave up. I think maybe that's the most important thing, just to keep that passion alive and burning, to fuel your what you want to do. I think that's the most important thing.
And not to also take it, I think, personally.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of reasons why somebody will not donate or sponsor, and it's not about you.
Yeah.
It depends on their budget. It depends if they care about this kind of project or not, if it suits them or not. But whatever, they have the right as well, not, if they don't want to. But there are a lot of people that do. And the way I think of it oftentimes is just like when I started writing, and you submit and you get rejections but then that did not stop me from the submission process. And money is kind of in the same way. There are a lot of venues and grants and opportunities where you just make the request. Some will say yes, and most will say no, but the ones that do say yes, they do keep you going, and it does help out a lot. Yeah.
I think the most important thing is the persistence, that you just have to have that spirit, and find your way through all these obstacles, because if you want to give up, it would be like the very first, step and you take no for answer, and like, okay, that's it, I'm not gonna try anymore or any harder. But I think for this project, we constantly like contacted people, organizations, people in the community, people outside the community. And for the very first time that we were able to exhibit this in Detroit, I just emailed this woman, Donna Jackson. She was amazing. And she sent an email back and said, like, I love your work and I want to support you, And that was like, oh my God.
Makes it all worth it.
Yeah, like after all these years, because we've been working on this project since 2015,
Wow.
and suddenly one person trusted us and was like, I hear you and I want to make this happen,
That is, I gotta tell you, even for myself,
Yeah.
because even though I did finish my first feature, and as you know, it recently won the book won an AirCoff award, but the film won a different an Indie Fest award, and I worked 8 years on it on the documentary, and certain things like this, whether you win an award or if you get any kind of support financially, whatever it may be, it really feels like, oh yes, I wasn't doing this for deep in your heart. But I liked what you said earlier, the creative part does come first, so you have to have quality work. If once you invest in that and you do a great job, I think it does help you when you go out there, when you're submitting.
For sure.
You know what you just did.
Yeah.
You know how much heart you put into it. And then, and it also requires, it seems like it worked with you, patience.
For sure.
So you got all these rejections. And when you said the year factor, I thought, oh, wow. But then, look, that one person, and I'm sure things start to shift.
Sure.
After just that one person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I mean, it's so inspiring interviewing you. I always learn. That's another reason there are all selfish reasons for when I have the guests. I always walk away with something that's empowering, even for myself. But I do pray that people that watch this, and especially women, because we know what it's like being minority women. And women from our community sometimes don't have such easy access,
For sure.
or the support, despite whatever we said. But we live in a society that is more welcoming and has more of a support system.
Yeah.
So I think part of us why being here is that we can really utilize our time and resources in a beautiful way as gratitude, so that those that see that will feel like this is possible. Yeah. Yes, I can do this.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's the hope. Yeah.
Yes. And I have like less than a minute. Just anything you want to say to your, birth country or women of that region, or, especially the artists that were involved in your exhibition.
Sure. I just wanted to say that if you don't find the resources or support that you're looking for, create it. I think that's one thing that we did with this 7,500 miles. And I think at least we proved it to ourselves and other artists involved that it's possible.
Wow, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Create it, yes. We have also the option for that. So, well, I really want to thank you for being on my show.
Thank you so
and I hope to
much.
have you here next time. Maybe you'll have like a feature that will win something, and then we'll talk about your future film,
Sure,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much.